Robert, I see you there. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, how are you, Jiva?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, doing great.
It's another beautiful day here. I'm so
Yeah,
glad. Well, thank you again for your time to join us today. We already have having a really, I would say, an exceptional time today. Started in the world of mobility. We are still continuously in the world of mobility. So I know you could. We right now waiting for you and trying to see what insights and perspectives we might unravel and unfold in front of each other. So
sure, sure.
before we go over there, means it's I think most of us know you and your illustrious career in the world of mobility. But let's try to go and try to unravel who is this Robert as a human, as a person, and what motivates you, Robert, and how did you find your way into the world of industrial design?
Um, wow. So the path to industrial design was, I think it was always in place. That's the way I think about it but I
You
didn't know,
to be a designer? That's amazing.
right? But I didn't know industrial design. I didn't know it as a term, as a field. But the path was like the journey was headed there, but I didn't know where I was going to go. I knew engineering wasn't for me. So growing up in the Detroit metro area, I was always drawing from the earliest time as a kid, like drawing. Through elementary school, drawing cars. It was just like always like drawing, but I had kind of always naturally just attuned my drawings towards cars and rocket ships and things that move.
Was somebody in
Um,
your family? Was somebody in your family?
no, that's the thing. So I had a love of cars. My father was a huge just car person. His background is not in automotive, but he has just a hobbyist passion for it. And so that there was always like a car component in our lives and the family and the house and the garage. And then I was always drawing. And so I would naturally just draw cars. And so all the way childhood and then into high school, I still didn't know industrial design. It wasn't until, believe it or not, junior year of high school. So this is after, guidance counselors are saying, what do you want to do with your life and college and things like that. And I had just said, oh, architect, because I thought that was creative. And but yeah, and finally, junior year high school, took a field trip to CCS, College for Creative Studies, and that single field trip in my art class, the junior year art class, changed my life, right? And that was, I basically went towards the studios and saw these renderings and I clay models, and it was like, okay, no more architecture. This is it. It was that single spark moment, and that trip.
You found your calling. That's pretty amazing because I know, as they say, it's a common joke, right? If there are psychiatrists walking around a school or a play yard, right? Looking at the play yard, they can see kids and they can tell like he's going to be this or he's going.
Right.
So if somebody would have seen you, like everybody jumping on a jungle gym, you will be in the corner sketching frivolously or
Yeah,
observing.
right. Right.
Like he's going to be a car designer. That's
I,
pretty amazing.
yeah,
Were
yeah.
your other siblings also in the world of design, or were you the only
No,
drawing?
I'm definitely the lone sheep in terms of design art. I'm also a huge music person. Just musically, I'm not the greatest, but I do try and play drums.
Wow,
But
drum.
that kind of creative aspect, be it in sound or visual, is my and rest of my family, wife, kid, no one else. So I'm definitely alone in that space.
Yeah, music.
Everyone else is much more analytical, So
Well, that's you are the rebel
yeah,
in your family. So
yes,
I means I should not say this, but I am going to. I play drums, but the Indian drums, the traditional Indian drums. So
okay,
not the sophisticated drums that normally you will see on a nice concert stage. But that's the only inkling of what I do or what I
right,
used to do years ago. And Lane on the call, she plays cello too. So there are other musicians over here. I'm not much into it. But before even we go into the world of mobility as such, means we at least saw your pathway of how you became a designer, and maybe at the end we can try to connect with the world of schools
Mhm,
and education. But
mhm.
as a designer right now, means what inspires you, or where do you go and try to seek inspiration?
Well, let's talk pre-COVID because I used to like go out of the house. I mean, and you hear a lot of designers saying this, G-Rock, but it's really I mentioned architecture earlier. I'm right. I live near Cranbrook Institute, and just the incredible example. All right. But I would say that architecture, nature. I go out and play with my kids a lot, and I've just been, I would say, in the last 5 years or so, just been really looking more, if that makes sense. Like really trying to slow down and like kind of looking at the world around, instead of just like I read this book that talked about, like walking your dog, like you can walk around the same path every day, or you can take a different path, at least once in a while. And just that one little element of switching up can bring, some new insights or some new, maybe you see a tree you've never seen before. So um, I think so a lot more of just slowing down and observing, G-Rock. I would say maybe 10 years ago, I'd say, of course, cars, fashion, architecture, I have to say that's common designer inspiration. But I just say like the natural and made world around, and just really like observing. And then, which we'll probably speak about later, I mean, in my current role, really diving into that human needs and human voice, human aspiration. So observing people, right, and the things they do is really interesting to me.
That's pretty interesting. As you said about walking the dog around and try to make those not random but intentional kind of changes to your journey or your course, and try to see what else might unravel in front of yourself, right? As you said, it might be a tree, and like, what is that, and what is the new
Yeah,
bud in the tree, or
yeah,
the flowers blooming here and there, and those. I think the element is always being alert to the surroundings and making sure you try to change the surroundings as you go. Our first speaker, he told about his thing he did last year was trying to walk each and every street in his entire city.
right,
So every time
right,
go to a different one, try to forcefully look at different things. It might be a different curb appeal, a different kind of a landscape, and
yeah,
try to forcefully make those connections. I personally, when I was young, this was way back when I still love to go to a library and get lost in library.
yeah,
Go to the
absolutely,
elements where I go to the sections where I know they will never entice me, they will never invite me. Like it might be a physics, or it might be metallurgy or something. But you go there, you spend half an hour here and there, and some connections happen, and that's enough. It might inspire you. It might just unlearn things a little bit. Coming to what Evan was
Mhm.
saying, the last element, but those things are pretty important. So
Yeah,
that's amazing to know a couple of other things. But let's come back to what you do, Robert. Means I know you were means we all know you were earlier with FCA, then you came to Ford and Ford Lincoln, but now you are in charge of the Ford's D Lab. Can you help us and our audience understand this new construct that you are
yeah,
leading?
D Ford. So I just to be clear, I don't lead the lab, but I lead product design within the lab. So we do have a lab director. We have labs in Detroit, London, Palo Alto, Shanghai, Melbourne, and Sao Paulo. So I guess I'll take a step back, and really the D Ford started. The genesis of it started in probably 2016 with our previous CEO, in a partnership with IDEO, really thinking about the human-centered design and design thinking and the power of that way of working, and really bringing that to Ford Motor Company, and in a big way. And so, like I said, it was probably the infancy was in 2016, and then with a small pilot studio in Palo Alto. And then through the years that built up to the point where it was okay, let's scale this. And the scaling pretty much happened in 2019, where all of these labs were set up. each with a lab director. And within each lab, there's crafts. So there's product design, interaction design, communication design, business design, design research, design strategy. So we're microcosm. We're like mini incubation labs, where we have all these crafts that are self-contained, but yet we're explicitly tied to Ford, of course. But it's a space where we do extensive consumer research, deep and try and really define deep, unearth deep insights, get as close to the customer as we can, current and future customers, understand the market, understand just the context of those customers. So how are they living? How do they get around? What are their buying habits? Just everything we can find out. And then also, again, extract what we call best opportunities or opportunity spaces. And really what our lab does is puts together, we really bring these opportunities to life, and we feed these into the greater Ford Motor Company. So it's really the very, very, very front end of any product, service, or experience program that we're able to, our work's able to help drive critical decision making. Should we do product X or product Y? And this is on a global scale. So we're kind of an essential piece of forward looking product and service spaces.
So basically, when you say that's pretty interesting, means it's to understand the entire, I would say, the global vehicle development process and the positioning of it as a spearhead of invention or innovation. So what you're saying is it is not specifically tied with a product or a brand or a marquee or something. You are doing something fundamental, new value, new layers of value, let's say exploration, and then trying to attach it to different marquees or different vehicle lines, or is
Well,
it like
we
one brand?
yeah, well, we're tied to the what we call the enterprise line, enterprise product line management. So those are each of our product areas, be it F-150, Mustang. So we serve the corporate areas of spaces, product spaces, right? So we are doing this work specifically tying it to vehicle lines, but we also have global futuring on our teams, and that we are not only serving today's product spaces, but we're always looking out beyond as well. And again, just helping to make those upfront decisions, like and also finding gaps in the market. Like, are there areas that we see unserved products and services?
So what does the day-to-day life looks like in this kind of an D4 lab?
Good, good question. It's very, there's a lot of energy, even virtually. A lot of energy because we have a lot of, this is a multidisciplinary team. So it's not like a design studio where there's, 50 industrial designers or studio engineers. We have, the backgrounds of our staff are extremely varied. Even on my team, where there's digital, there's physical, there's people with psychology interest. We do ethnography, of course, but and then what's great is we have people from varied backgrounds, so from different industries as well. So what that gives us is, I have the traditional automotive knowledge and I'll just say the traditional path of we're going to do the next project. Okay, start sketching, the market, and then out pops the next car. But we have people outside of automotive, so but still with those critical skill sets that help us with insight gathering, with customer research and strategy, that helps like challenge us as well, right? So then when we're going to the product teams, sometimes we're really pushing in spaces that maybe couldn't have been unveiled with traditional thinking, right, or traditional backgrounds.
So basically means I'm just trying to understand. So when you go out, let's say out in the world to find this latent unmet needs, wants, and desires, and let's say you grab them, uh, how do you transfer them to your specific brand? Because I would say Ford is specificity for its own brand and the brand pillars for every brand. If something changes in the market, how do you fit it into your brand philosophy, or you try to add and assimilate going further to see like, hey, these are the new attributes coming out. We should find a space for this.
Yeah, I mean, if we see it as as an essential customer need, then we would, I think, bring it in and you know, deliver what the need is, but also make sure that it fits within the Ford design pillars and philosophies of who we are and what our products are, right? So um, I guess you could say we do it the Ford way, but deliver. We definitely want to deliver on it, but in our own unique way.
Because that's always a question, and not just for you, but it's for me, for everybody. Like how
Yeah,
do you start thinking about a concept? Do you think about the product first, or do you think about the brand first?
that's a healthy tension. That's a really good question because um, yeah, again, from our standpoint, we're thinking about the customer first as a brand. So then once we find out and we're explicitly clear that this is a space the customer is asking us for, then then we approach it with our brand lens, to deliver it. But
And
yeah, I think it's a customer first within the within our principles as a brand.
because it's you have worked with some amazing phenomenal brands, means Chrysler, means Jeep, and over here Ford 150. These are like some really precious kind of, and I would say kind of a good legacy in these
Yeah,
brands, right? So I think no matter what, the people means the 150s and the most bought vehicles still after so many decades as such. So how do you feel that's a heavy burden on your shoulders to still make sure that this keeps on continuing? How do you manage the tension in handling such huge good
yeah,
and
yeah.
market?
There's a. I think each day our team is. We have the over 100-year brand, and then we have the competition that's very fierce. Of course, each day, each week, we hear company X or new companies showing concepts and really pushing the thinking. And sometimes for a more legacy company, it's hard to stay as quick, with with being just being able to have an idea and put it out there, like, and so yeah, it's a challenge, but we also have to balance that with our customer base and legacy products like even the Bronco or Mustang or any of the products that have such a strong following, that we want to continue to. We don't want to lose that spirit. We never want to lose that spirit. And I think the Mach-E is a great example of that. Like, I mean, it's people were challenging if it's a Mustang, and and now that people are able to drive it, buying it, driving it, social media posts are just off the wall with enthusiasm, and people, so it's anytime you're, so we have that balance. It's like people don't expect us to create the next, but I think we're showing that a legacy company can do just that, and with it bring that emotional element, that maybe a startup might not doesn't have. So we have an advantage if we can get out there.
And you're doing means I am biased, means my wife owns one of the 150 trucks as such. It's a beautiful product. I steal it a lot. But what you say is very true. Means there's a storied legacy kind of an values built into a product. How do
Right.
you even manage that kind of a challenge to still create the next one has to be fresher from the earlier one, and still try
Mhm.
to create that emotional equation each time and every time. And you just mentioned of Ms. Mark E, the Bronco, which is absolutely a gorgeous vehicle.
Yeah.
uh, what was, no, I think you said you started in 2016, so this would not
Yeah.
have been from D4 lab.
Right. So that was pre that. Yeah, that was not a D4 explicit creation, but no, that and we have many things forthcoming, but yeah, it's just there's always this balance with the new and the what people know us for, and what people's expectations are, you know.
Um,
Um,
you still have to make sure that people are not alienated from the Mustang brand as such,
well,
but
right,
bring
right,
more people, or the, as you said, the current customers and the future customers, to
that's
be
right,
still
that's right,
enticed by them, inspired by them, provoked by them,
right.
and keep on buying them. It is not easy task what you are doing.
It's not, and we see even on our F-150 truck, we see emerging customer bases, right? So we have our traditional, of course, and we provide an excellent truck for them. But there's also now emerging markets who and people that have maybe some different ideas of what they want in a truck, and that's extremely challenging to um, for a product that's so solid for over 30 years, um,
Yeah.
to then see a changing demographic or customer base who may want subtle differences in the product.
And so, talking about the customer base or the differences in the products, or just the way people are looking at this emergent way of thinking. Earlier, let's say, as you said, when you went to school, as such, we always talked about automotive design or
Mhm,
transportation design.
mhm.
And now, suddenly, literally overnight, the description goes to the world of mobility solutions design.
Right.
How can you explain a little bit more about how you are seeing this as an mobility solutions company now, and what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, well to me, I mean, just fundamentally, um, I guess mobility to me means the whole picture, right? So it's the end to end, it's the ecosystem, it's um, I have a car for I may have a car to get here to A to B, but then B to C, I may be on a scooter. C to D, I may be ride share. D to E, I may be on a train, right? So I just see it as this end to end transportation system, and it becomes more than just the one individually owned product to a host of products and services, and what we call micro mobility. That's why I brought up scooters. Ford owns Spin, so that now becomes part of the conversation, right? And then that touches on the whole idea of ownership versus access, which is really a big conversation right now. So less and less about buying maybe one finite product, and more about access to a mobility ecosystem or transportation ecosystem.
And that eventually should work, right? Means I think it still has plenty of other notions to it, try to see how it might how all the parties would work together, but it just makes sense as an ideal user kind of an condition a few years down the line. Means I'm here right now, let's say right now I'm in my spare bedroom in my house, but eventually when life comes to normal, hopefully we might still be commuting a little bit, but then I want to go for a journey from here to Florida. Like, I don't need to
Mhm.
buy a van. I can just
Right,
access, as you said, from the library, from the say up. I love the brand because of its, I would say, attributes. I would just try to go to the similar brand to go
right,
and help me. Hey, now book me something for the next 15 days because I want to go to Florida with my family and again come back. And those sound. I would love to have those times come as faster to the end users as possible, because right now I think the average number of cars ownership for the USA is what it is. Eventually, if you go and see, it might not be that. There would
right,
still be
right.
vehicles driven, more vehicle miles driven. It's not that vehicles will not be driven. they will, as you're saying, might not be owned by Mr. Jim.
Right, right, right. And the magic there is also when a brand can be proactive and understand, like you're going on a vacation, and when you start connecting mobility with, you know, like the Airbnb models, and so then now you start talking about like the ecosystem. So you're not only having your mobility, but then where you're staying is planned, and so this gets into the service. The service is connected with mobility as well, and being proactive and being able to know where you like to stay, know your preferences, not only in the vehicle but in the spaces you stay and visit.
So when you say you try to like let's say extract things from the end users or potential end users, you mentioned you have four, five, six, half a dozen labs all over the world. Do
Mhm.
you cross pollinate with each other, or then are you in charge of, let's say, US mainland, somebody is somewhere else? Because the propensities of buying a vehicle or understanding the needs of a vehicle are completely different in different
Correct.
continents, right? How do
Yeah.
you use them?
Yeah, that's why we have labs in these strategic cities around the world. Is to then each lab is within the heart of that community and that region, and we literally compare notes, right? And that gives us, so we have researchers and strategists in each of those labs, designers and such. So we collaborate when at the right time, because we also want to give, we don't want to like tarnish the work as well, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that we do truly extract and digest, understand our local regional insights, but also then come together once that work is done and synthesize and see what's common, because there are commonalities, of course, but then pull apart what's truly unique, and then um, if it's a global product, how do we react to that, and how does that how do we design for that, right?
And it will be remiss if we just don't talk about COVID right now.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
we always had these amazing situations of ride hailing and ride sharing, and everything was uh, pretty good. And suddenly, what
yeah.
happened? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think my thoughts remain on, I think the sharing, well, let's say ride hailing, um, I believe is still valid. I think, again, I think the move to more access subscription model, it will continue. I think access will continue. I think sharing is that caveat, with obviously more personalized spaces being wanted with COVID and that. So maybe, we, either there's vehicles with extreme air quality during changeover moments, or there's more of an individualized um, approach to hailing, or to subscription. But I'm not sure also how long, will there be a moment where the comfort level, or the world gets back to, or has a new normal where people are then comfortable again to share. I don't know how far that's out,
Yeah, and again,
that
the jury's out there. Means literally, no
yeah,
one knows. We
right, right,
we are going to go back to work in next month or 2 months, or
right, right,
all those.
right.
But it's interesting to see how I would say how the humanity's perspective changes literally overnight. I think I was just talking with the second speaker. This time last year, we were completely gung ho about single plastic straw uses, and the entire world was shifting.
Yeah,
Suddenly, last year, the single-use plastics are saving each and every of our human species. So suddenly, it's more plastic, it's more problems. But right
yeah,
now, we
yeah,
are surviving. It's a pretty big element of what we can do because of this single-use elements too. So jury's out. There is no either way going happening around. But that gives us the rise of emergent technologies of UVC light cleaning
yeah,
uses, or independent air infiltration systems, or or relying more on the interfaces where the app would know whether you have a fever
I
or
think,
not, and then you'll just not be able to access a vehicle or let people know that you have vaccines, and all those things will effectively start to come together as such too. Uh, but excuse me. But no matter, as we are going forward, I think there are one or two questions which are on still this topic. Before we go forward, we can just try to talk about that. This one uh, question from Jason. How do you design out the opportunity for theft? I recently heard that F-250 is one of the most stolen vehicles in our state. I do not know.
uh, how do you just, sorry, how do you design around theft?
About the opportunity for theft, because 250 is one of the most stolen vehicles in Colorado state.
Wow, I first of all, I didn't know that. That's interesting, but I'm not sure. My goodness, I don't know how you just,
I think it's yeah, if you wanted to answer that, but it's
yeah,
actually a pat on the back that at least people are finding it.
yeah, they love our truck, you know.
Almost there. Another question from Peter. Robert, how do you include sustainability into your upfront process?
And
Uh,
you, into, sorry, say that again, Sheila.
how do you include sustainability in your upfront process? I think right now in all the trends we are
Oh,
seeing, sustainability is a pretty big one coming in. How do you
yeah.
engage?
I mean, you know, for us, it's we have I go straight to materials because it's constantly on our mind of in the sustainability space, at least for the vehicle. So we have like um, a materials group that we work with, and I think that's. We also talk to, we have a like advanced manufacturing piece that, so when we come up with the upfront concepts, we work with people and who are experts in their field in sustainability. If it's metals, if it's end to end, if it's end of life for the vehicle. So we have those conversations up front when we're proposing concepts, because we're not, several of us ourselves are not experts in sustainability, but we have those people in the company. And we just did one where it was like an end to end, from vehicle purchase all the way through end of life, and what that looks like, and the different like materials that could be used in manufacturing processes and things like that, that are very different from today. Um, and we're looking into those. So it is a component of our work, absolutely.
And so that's pretty interesting because it is a upcoming trend. But from let's say when you said you engage into consumer researches and you try to extract values from the people, do people are expressly telling a company like yours to that they are looking out to pay a little bit more for sustainability in return? Because till 10 years ago also sustainability was always a trend, but
Right,
it's still, I think, a little bit expensive to go green because there has to be a decent following and people are
right,
ready to pay
right.
money for those kind of life cycle management elements too. Have you seen
I,
this kind of a
I
demand from out there?
I think we're finding it in a couple ways, G-Rog. It's almost like going to Whole Foods or going to a store and paying more for organic. There's some people who will directly do that. You're like, yes, I want to know that this is um, has sustainability in mind, and I will pay for that. Other people expect it to be just part of the product, and not like oh, this is special because it's sustainable. They expect us to just make sustainable. So I think we find that, and then we find people that say it's of no interest at all. So you know, you have this bandwidth, but it fascinates me that the people who just say it should just be, it shouldn't be a special thing, you know. And that I really, that always causes me to think the most, like, yeah, they're probably right, you know. But the reality is that it takes a lot of investment and changes and processes, et cetera, plants, uh, to do sustainable through end to end all the way through.
And that's very true, Robert. Means it's as you are saying, like, sustainability should have always been a core
Right, right,
part of what
right,
we're doing as designers, uh,
right,
and it should not be an additional feature to have, like a trim level. You should
right, right. Like you don't check sustainability
you
when you
should
buy a car, you
yeah,
know.
you're right. I think that should go back to the elements of, and that is actually go back to the tenets of design or industrial design thinking about
Yeah,
making sure that if it is the right, what is the right thing to do, and as true designers, that's how we always start to understand about, okay, these are the expressed needs from the market, from the commercial world, maybe from the financial world, but
right.
what is the right thing to do in front. So because we also try to think about it from the way of not just human centered design, but
Hmm.
humanity centered design, because it is, even though you are buying it, you are still depleting rainforest here or somewhere else.
Right, right,
We are keeping up the things all behind that. So
right.
sustainability is a pretty stronger trend, and hopefully companies, as I would say, as big and as loved companies as you are trying
Yeah,
to take care of it
yeah.
in a meaningful way.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely top of mind, and it's there's no easy answers. Even if we said let's do everything sustainable tomorrow, I mean, but we're definitely chipping away and looking ahead.
Yeah, means looking at the entire life cycle, I do not know. We might have talked about this, but my first vehicle, when I was young and I started driving,
Sure.
it was back in India, Robert,
Uh-huh,
a
uh-huh.
little guy. So my first vehicle was a Ford Cortina, 1969 Mark II Cortina. My mom and dad were here, so they when they went back to India, they shipped this long ass vehicle all the way on the tiny streets of India. So I was driving on the wrong side of the road, a left-hand
Yeah.
drive vehicle, and still trying to steal a car through the streets over there. But the car is still there. Means it's not with us and our family.
Uh-huh.
It's literally it's an old car, but I'm not saying this is a good example for sustainability. But the second life, third life, fourth life is
Hmm.
always there
Hmm.
in certain parts of the world.
It's
it,
still there. Yeah.
it happens with every good piece of machinery. Like
Yeah.
my brother, if he just bought a new refrigerator. What
Hmm.
happened to the older refrigerator? He just went and gave it to his servant. I mean, over there it's very cheap labor, so you typically
Sure.
have two servants in your house. So it doesn't just get scrapped. It doesn't just get
Right,
into
right, right.
something. It gets reused, and then after that, let's say his driver right now has him. After he will have a different one, he will pass on to somebody
Mhm,
else he
mhm,
knows into
mhm.
the interiors of India. And
Yeah,
so the machines sometimes it might be a bad part about the pollution levels of a vehicle like that, but there are certain different ways that every community or every society tries to grapple at
yeah,
sustainability. So
yeah.
that was not a fine example. That suddenly reminded me of my first vehicle being a Ford vehicle. It's we can talk a little bit more about that. But coming back to the world of, I would say, autonomous cars, or I would say the promise of the autonomous cars, and I am waiting for it like each and every day. I hope we are near to that, and I think it's going to be near to that. How would people try to connect with vehicles if it is going to be fully autonomous? And it's a good thing. I understand the value of time. Time is currency, and we can do plenty of things over there.
Mhm.
But now the connection with the vehicle is I would say more visceral. How do you think that experience would morph when the level 4 autonomous driving comes to fruition?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, at least as we know today, probably autonomous vehicles will be service based, not ownership. So again, I think it will be more of a mobility option, and you can ride hail or pick up an autonomous vehicle. I think from my standpoint, I think the digital um, element is the space where, just like your phone, right? Everyone's iPhone looks the same, but you go to the home screen and we have our individual apps, our individual family pictures, or what have you, right? And that creates the phone, but the shell is the same. So imagine an autonomous vehicle that arguably might have a brand's design, but I think it's once you get in that space and how are does the space know you? Does it, you know, how are you treated in that space? And I think the digital element, or the uh, that digital layer is, does your media connect instantly when you walk in? Does the vehicle speak to you? I think that's you know, what are the sounds and chimes that greet you? The smell, the air quality. So I think the interior experience is one element where, uh, I think there's an opportunity to know the customers, right? And that's, and you know the customers even before they enter the vehicle. So that's a layer. It's no longer like a vehicle you buy and it's close to your heart and you own it, and you know it's more of a service. But how can that service be the most personalized? Is where I take it.
And that seems pretty important too, about the entire servicitization of anything and everything we are
Exactly.
exposed to. And I think two of our last speakers were talking about the similar things about creating a shell. And let's say
Yeah.
these Uber, Lyft companies, if it all comes back to life again, they might
Hmm.
just be buying shells from OEMs such as yourself.
Sure.
The
Sure.
interiors could be done by somebody else who say like, hey, we want this and this configuration for daytime, nighttime,
Right.
uh,
Right.
for
Right.
Shanghai, different for Mumbai, and those other elements too. Just I will try to go with a couple of questions over here, and then we can come back again to close it out. Like question from Pete: what work has been done to focus on avoiding the slip into commoditization of this new mobility? If we're talking about vehicles to mobility, but we have this problem of commoditization in the world of car design. Anything guide rails in place to focus on avoiding the slip into commoditization?
So commoditization. So as we enter like the autonomous space, like trying to not become a commodity. um, yeah, I mean it's that's definitely a tough one. If you look at all of the vehicles that have been shown in the autonomous space, I mean, um, just you know, there's this joke in the design community that there's the they all just tend to look the same. There's a similarity there, right? Because there's a paradigm of, okay, seats are facing each other, there's social seating.
Yeah,
We want to maximize interior space. We want grand, wide opening doors. We want tight turning radius. So that there's already baked in fundamentally to the product itself, if we're talking AVs, that tend to drive everyone to the same solution. And then there's the legislative layer on top of that as well. Does it have lights? Is there a windshield? What's the lighting? What's the exterior sound? So I think that is the challenge for us right now. It's a great question because we're dealing with that. Like, how do you know, what does our AV? What's our footprint? What's our approach? That's not the same as the other companies, right?
yeah.
um, and it's true, like on paper it would seem like everyone will just have a shell and then you outfit it, but we're trying to think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I think the answer is about the holistic system, as you started to talk with about it, not just one vehicle. As you said, you
Right.
have a scooter company. So,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so talking about a vehicle, a scooter, are you also thinking about bicycles and trying to see how this extreme sustainable way of traveling or moving a body across also can be used in this world of sustainable vehicle mobility service
Yeah, I
design?
mean, yeah, we don't build bicycles or and haven't bought a bicycle company, but yes, I think we're looking at all forms of, which includes walking, by the way. You know, I mean, I think, you know, we talk about last mile, we talk about, you know, there is an element where a vehicle can only go so far, right? So just like today, of course. So there's uh, and we're also thinking about this with moving people and moving goods. So when you talk about the goods side, and moving packages, there's always this last mile or last 50 feet that has to be considered, um, as well.
And the last mile, the last few hundred yards, it's always becoming, they become more and more crucial and how
Right.
it's
Right.
going to happen and how it can still be, if not shared completely in the public, but shared by a part of families, right? Means right now, many people in this COVID world are still trying to be not completely public, but they with two or three or four families only. That's it. That's their pod, and
Right.
between that, they are still, I would say, living their social life. So eventually, it
Hmm.
goes to this
Hmm.
human element, how it will be more pod thinking rather than something else. We have a few 10 minutes at least in the front. I want to come back and talk about. I also know you are a professor. You teach at CCS. So before we
Yes.
go into the world of education, a couple of questions. I think Clay is asking, what do you see being the biggest shift in your industry 10 years from now? So any big shifts you may or may not be able to answer that. So it's
Big shifts in the automotive design industry.
yes, sir.
I wow. I think the way in which the shifts from, well, at least in automotive design, I think the shift from just focusing on shapes and surfaces uh, to experiences will just be accelerated tenfold. And I'm already seeing it at the school level where, um, when when I'm in class, like we're talking about end-to-end journeys.
So what do you teach? Which classes do you teach at
Yeah,
CCS?
so I teach transportation design at the and also design theory. And most recently, design theory was a mobility design theory course.
Hmm.
So we dealt with actually autonomous vehicles in the 2030 space. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, and when I went to CCS so many years ago, it was pure drawing beautiful cars. I mean, that was our that's what we did. And I think now when we're looking at portfolios, and if someone just shows us beautiful cars, that it doesn't move the needle anymore. It's a yes and it's a very big and. Like, beauty is still important, and I think traditional industrial design is that's in my heart. It's still very important, but it's there's so much more now to consider.
So as a company like yours, what do you expect from this new crop of students coming out of schools? Because the
Um,
mobility world is changing, not just cars. So what typically
yeah.
are the tools you look out for? What is that
Um,
act?
well, I think the end is like critical thinking, like asking the right questions, um, again, thinking about, and also thinking about the automobile and its greater context, so not just the automobile, or just thinking about um, people and cities and transformative technologies, and how we move, and asking critical questions on how we can move differently, right? And so um, I tend to go, or really be admired in the students that are um, sometimes not drawing cars, if that makes sense. um, because they're thinking in a much different way. And I think a way in which we need to think, which is life maybe beyond the car as we know it today. And it's changing so fast. Electrification, what we call ICE to BEV, so internal combustion to electric, which is the road to then to autonomy, is happening very, very fast.
So basically, just as any OEM has to find their differentiation and distinction, the schools also need to find their differentiation and distinction so that they can rightfully create the products ready for you to
Right,
I would
right,
say you and studios like us
right.
to hire and take it to the next level.
Yeah,
I
I
like
think I think a simple course that could be amazing in an industrial design program would be like design research. I think we do so much of that, and it's critical to our work. And if you started that at the student level, to start getting people to really go out, listen to people, and see how people relate to their products, what they need, what they want, at the student level, that would be incredible.
And that goes as the holy grail of any design studio,
Absolutely, absolutely.
because we also at our studio means we make sure that we do proper invest into proper robust research,
Yeah,
because finally designer is not the user. We might be a single
right,
for the
right,
user, but to still
right.
understand what that crosshair is going to need. If you have to represent that, it just becomes an normally sometimes clients come to us, means we are a consultancy, and they say like, hey, we want to change this and this, and like, okay, let's try to think about research, how we want to do that. Like, what research? We're going to tell you what has to be done.
Yeah, right, right.
That can only help so much. We are not saying that you do not have your hypothesis, but
Sure,
want to
sure.
do it, it has to be really done in understanding what are those needs and wants and desires and dreams that just have to be
Right.
solved because of these changing paradigms. The value structure is changing. The sentiments of people are right now, as we are in the COVID world, are changing. The
Yeah,
sensitivities have completely changed, and people now can put their bucks in saying, "Yeah, I want sustainable. I will go
yeah,
over here.
yeah.
I want modular. I want a vehicle to last for 50 years. I'm going to go over here and more into the world of commercial aspects of it, or just miles and miles of miles getting ridden on a vehicle. Those things might come out on the top also.
Right.
So I know we have a hard close at 4 o'clock. So talking about industrial design, what do you think is industrial design's future role as we go forward after 5, 10, 15 years? How should industrial design be itself can be rethought about? Can it? Should it be?
I just think we need to, again, like I was saying, I think the traditional craft of industrial design, the beauty, the precision, function, how things work, how things are well made and put together. I think even in a future AI world is still going to be very important, and maybe even more important, because we'll go back to trying to find that humanness in products, right? As everything, people predict everything's AI and there won't need to be any designers and you guys are toast, but I think I take a step back and I'd say, I'm all about AI supporting, AI's in a support role and in design development, but I think I'm all about the human crafts of industrial design.
I think you said is really right. 20, 30 years ago, when computers came in, people thought like, yeah, humans, you will not have to do anything. The computer
Yeah.
will do it. The computer doesn't do it. You sit behind the computer, and then he or she does it. And the same thing is happening over here.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
always an interpretation area, right? Means it cannot be ones and zeros. Means that's why
right,
machines are machines and humans are humans.
right, right.
Do something that can be a machine ready or designed only for machines, and that's what would be another world. But there'll always be an element of emotionality. Whatever we
Absolutely.
do is always superseded by the way it's going to be in the emotional context. And I think you mentioned about beauty.
Mhm.
No matter, beauty is going to still be a pretty big context of the vehicle exterior, interiors, or the UX as such. But you're right, beauty is not where we as designers start. We start in the world of usefulness and
Correct,
usability
correct.
and efficacy of use and ergonomics of use, and then it has to look beautiful, because
Right.
no matter what means it's getting a got to have vehicle which just looks
Yeah.
sexy out in the driveway means,
Right.
and which just
Right.
smiles on your face. That's what people finally want to buy, right? They're not buying, I think, as you mentioned, not just a product or a component. They're buying happiness, or they're
Hmm.
buying
Hmm.
safety, or they're buying peace of mind. And
Yeah. Yeah.
how to package that together and saying like, yeah, that's my new Mustang, and I am proud of it because that's how it sits over there. So
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
automotive design, literally, not just mobility, is one of the unique design domains in the world where they have really exploited the element of beauty to an amazing level.
Hmm.
We work
Hmm.
in commercial products and medical products and consumer products, but the way what designers like you have done for last so many years is here as a standing beacon.
That's why
Uh,
there's still icons. There's still icons that date back, a century, and you can pinpoint them, and it goes back to beauty and design, right? And we celebrate those in yearly car shows.
it goes in
So,
here, and hopefully
yeah,
we'll get to meet together at the
yeah,
next, maybe at least next year.
that's right.
I know we need to close it in, but any parting remarks, one or two nuggets of wisdom for people, like these are the 2 or 3 things that keep in mind as you go on a journey and eventually learn from you?
Yeah, I mean, I just say look around. You know, I always say use the five senses, and they will help guide you. You know, I mean, look around, slow down,
Yeah.
take in the world, which is extremely hard to do these days. Not just COVID, but just the pace. I think the speed is just it's so. I always say, you know, slow down and observe, and just be curious, and that's just those things will you know, keep you in active learning all the time.
I like that. I'm going to use the first one you said, slow down.
Slow down,
I
slow
think
down.
this is for myself, just slow down a little bit. Uh, and then eventually the synthesis and analysis will happen. But yeah,
Yeah,
not everything just has to be just back to back to back to back to back.
correct.
Uh,
Yeah,
but that's very interesting. Once again, Robert, thank you. Thank you a lot
thank you.
for finding time in your schedule to be on the virtual design conversations. And
Thanks
uh,
a lot.
uh, thank you. And we will be, excuse me, we will be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Fun time.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Robert Walker from Ford Labs, 4D Labs, I would say. And that's the end of today's 4 speakers, 4 hours, 4 insights discussion as such. We had a wonderful, I would say, a narrative. We started with Thomas Gold from Adient, and he talked about a little bit more in the world of interiors and design. Then we went over to the CTO of Cooper Tires, Ben Patel, and he talked really amazingly about this element called tires, these donuts that we are always surrounded with, and how they are an integral part of whatever we do, including the salmon fishing upstream in the Seattle area. And the third was Evan from our studio itself, talking about the frameworks of how to understand or how to think about any problem at hand, not just problem solving, but from the opportunity space explorations also. And last but not the least, we had Robert here talking about the world of mobility and what's going to come down the pipeline as such. So thank you once again. I think you have my and Lanea's email. Feel free to give us your feedback. If you want to suggest any speakers for our next virtual design conversations, please let us know. Or if you want to be a speaker, let us know. The next one is already on the calendar. Lanea did the link on the chat, but if not, you will receive it in your email too. It's going to be about commercial product innovation. It's going to be an amazing day like this. Till that time, take care. Over and out.